Khubor ka Batisi TV. Lawan Rashapi da ka Frank Motors. I am Tata Punch. Price starting at 5.80 lakhs. Ringkat bat ka net foodish. Ordar mapi nginwan ra amangi hakir dob yeng jongpi.
Ha ka arpenyo tre ujeliu arajar afuar ka Meklia Institute of Governance kala pelonge ka jinga theriatai halor ka phang pedeng kilat Pathai Khubor bat ka Synshar Khadar ya kini ka jinga merjimut la pelong ha Asian Confluence Lady Veronica Lane lajm khra Shillong ha ka bau u Rajesh Ramachandran u editor jong ka Tribune u dei nongkren ubah khaman ki badan lang ni jinga lang kilong Sampat Kumar Principal Secretary Government of Meghalaya, but u Director General MIG, u Shri Iban Swer, Director MIG, ki nong thok Khubor bakan thop ya kong Patricia Mukhem, Editor Shillong Times, but David Lightplang, President Shillong Press Club, but ki nong thok Khubor na Shillong, kumjo ki officer sorkar. Hakini ki jingilang kilay keren halor ka benta jo gilat Pathai Khubor, haka emlang salang, but bakilong ru, kasur jo gi Paidbah haka Synshar Khadar, na bakilat Pathai Khubor. Kilong kum ka jingkiang ka papuan hap deng ki Paidbah bat ka sorkar.
Bring a kind of some ideas and also to bring people together to facilitate a kind of a cross learning between different stakeholders. So one of the things I think you are aware recently we have done about with the legislators, Meghalaya Legislative Research Fellowship Program, where under that we have taken the honorable legislators to Indian School of Business, and where they had a kind of a lot of exchange with different academia, policy practitioners, and getting a very good this is the kind of a thing that Meghalaya Institute of Governance is doing. We also organize some of these lectures essentially to again to introduce some new ideas and also to reflect on what we are doing, how should we do, how best we can do. So this is a kind of a platform. This institution is essentially to strengthen certain very core elements of governance. So one of the as you all aware, media is the press is one of those four pillars of democracy. But again, we are talking about media and the governance. So how it is so important, because needless to say, it is so important because in a large democracy like this, or even any democracy, media plays a very, very important role by articulating the aspirations of the people, by articulating the concerns of the people, and also to act as a kind of a dissemination platform where a lot of things actually what the governments are trying to do that can be disseminated to the people too. So it acts like a bridge. So this is a very important I think media provides. But in fact I would say there is a triple helix model for governance. So what is the triple helix is that in the triple helix basically the three triangle one is a very important thing is that of course the political leadership, which is essentially the elected government, and at the same time we have the media, and the other one is the catalysts. Who are the catalysts? Catalysts are those some maybe catalysts can be the civil servants, catalysts can be some civil society organizations, catalysts can be the academicians with some research and data. They would come up with ideas what actually the governments can do. So there is a very important element, element for connecting the media with the government.
Curtailed through the Constitution First Amendment Act of 1951. Contrast this with the 1791 First Amendment of the US Constitution, according to which the US, I quote, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. So, I just wanted to bring these two first amendments in perspective. I downloaded a PDF of our constitution and ran a check to find how many times the words press and newspaper appear in the Constitution. Very few. Once, along with factories, boilers and electricity, in enumeration of the items in the concurrent list. And a couple of times regarding exemption in the levying of taxes. Our Constitution otherwise is not very eloquent about the freedom of the press or the role of independent press in our society. Yet, if Indian media and media professionals are being accorded the sanctity reserved for constitutional entities, it is a testimony to the strength, vibrancy and depth of democracy in our society, which we often decry as regressive, feudal, status quoist and pre-modern. Our media, with no legal or constitutional validity, remains important because our society has deemed it to be so. And the one and only reason for the society to attach this sort of importance to the media is because of the importance our people give to what is called public opinion. We as a people have immense faith and respect for public opinion. I hope to explain in this lecture the importance of the legitimacy of public opinion for governance and how the power of media and its role in shaping the society lie entirely in the legitimacy of public opinion. It is important to understand the history of modern media in India to appreciate its power and its role in our society, constantly shaping our present and thereby our future. Modern media was a British colonial project in India. I always go back to the history of newspapers to explain the importance of media in the contemporary context, as I remain fascinated by the role, no, not just a role, but the primacy assigned to newspapers by the colonial administration in India. Let me use the term newspaper instead of media, as I am talking about a period much before radio or the television, when media could only have meant newspapers. We commonly understand or even equate newspapers with democracy, free speech, freedom of choice and the principle of one person, one vote. Sure, there cannot be democracy without freedom of speech and a free media. But the converse is not true. There can be and will always be media without democracy or free speech. During the British Raj, the power of newspapers was so big that it was imperative to publish and circulate newspapers even when the nation was not free. Even when it was ruled by an oppressive government with no popular representation. So, I'm sorry to disappoint government officials who literally wear power on their sleeves. For I believe that a society is not controlled by batons, bullets and prisons. It is controlled by a narrative, which means a story or a description of a series of events or a particular way of explaining or understanding those events. By story, we don't mean fiction, but a narration of events from a particular perspective. The same set of facts and figures can be told in many ways according to the perspective of the storyteller. The teller's perspective is of prime importance because the whole point in telling the story is not to convey the bare facts, but to convince the listener and to ensure that the listener absorbs and accepts the teller's version of the events. All rulers and governments want the masses to believe and accept their version of the description of contemporary events. Rulers want the masses to be like children who go to sleep listening unquestioningly to their mothers' bedtime tales. Like bedtime tales unconsciously shape the character of a child, the description of contemporary events over time shapes the character of the masses. Stories told over centuries become the collective unconscious of a race or a group of people. Collective unconscious, according to psychiatrist Carl Jung, represents the part of the mind that retains memories and impulses, which is inherited in the brain structure of a group of people. The collective unconscious is supposed to carry archetypes or universal primordial images and ideas. Subjects or citizens who are responsive and happy are easy to govern. Along with ease of governance, I would wonder whether there is some sort of a genetic requirement for human beings, for public acknowledgement and public adulation. From a favorable opinion to public adulation, what wouldn't a ruler do to have the masses on his or her side? I'm deliberately using the term ruler instead of administrator because I first want to place the idea of public opinion in the context of an authoritarian regime rather than a democratic government. Only then would we understand how crucial public opinion is to any form of government, brutally authoritarian or a benign monarchy. So it was while seeking the legitimacy of public opinion that the British began publishing newspapers in India. They had brute power and the entire nation under their boots. Yet they sought to create a positive public opinion for their rule. Is this a contradiction? I would not think so. Any kind of power ought to create its own opposition. Intelligent administrators know that their deeds, even when they are just and fair, ought to create disaffection in at least some sections of the society badly impacted by their decisions. So it is in order to manage the disaffection that the administration itself puts out the dominant story or dominant description of important events. The first Indian newspaper was the Bengal Gazette, founded in 1779, obviously in Calcutta, the seat of the British Imperial. And every regional language from almost every district getting circulated, things were already going out of hand. Then came the TV revolution, first national channels, then regional channels, and finally local cable TV news from and for every mohalla. As if that was not enough, the digital explosion happened. With anyone with a smartphone becoming a news consumer, commentator, anchor, reporter and whatnot. Anyone with a Facebook or an Instagram account can defame anyone, and anyone with a Twitter handle can call anyone else names. We are truly in a strange situation of not knowing what is being said, whether what is being said is correct, whether everything that is being said should be taken seriously, or how much of it should be countered. Has the digital explosion made the media more important or less important? Is a question that gets asked all the time. Because now most leaders do not even want to give interviews. They don't even want to hold press conferences. They just address the nation digitally. They look at a camera, talk to that camera, that's recorded, played on various social media platforms, and that is the primary engagement. So, does it mean that the legacy media has lost its importance? Well, when a newspaper, before actually talking about the digital media, I would like to address a more important issue about public opinion formation. When a newspaper or a TV channel puts out a story, it often creates public opinion by the reaction it evokes.
You as somebody from the same profession, what do you do when information is so, when you ask something from a particular officer who has the information, but he or she just refuses to give information? And then, especially if young reporters go, there is this very disdainful attitude, as if to say, what business do you have to come and ask these questions? So how do we deal with this? Of course, we can go to the right to information route, but it takes a long time if you want to break a story.
Work on it for a long period of time and build sources. There was no easy way out. And one good example that comes to my mind was when I was working with the Times of India. This was the UPA regime. Was it the UPA regime? Last days of India. That is 2003 probably. 2003, 2004. So I got to hear that there were lots of middlemen who were helping people by bribing bank officials to get loans, huge amounts of loans, in tens or hundreds of crores. 20 years ago, hundreds of crores is like thousands of crores now. So I heard about a banking joint secretary. So I went to him. Thought that must be a public spirited person, and knocked on his doors. Went to him repeatedly. I was completely stonewalled. There was met him repeatedly and completely stonewalled. I could see that there was not an iota. There was not an iota of the public spirit in him. And then a few years later, I was immensely amused to see that this is the same guy who is the 2G CNDG. So, and he is taking all the credit for the people in the Comptroller and Auditor General of India's office had dug up and had worked and had set it up. So most probably he would have reluctantly signed it. So it's the same person. So I have been extremely lucky to have met with a lot of public spirited officers. So my answer to your question, ma'am, would be that if one door closes, we need to go on knocking at other doors. What else can we do? And that is where I am always optimistic. And I have invariably found. I couldn't do that story. In fact, that story became much bigger because our entire banking system collapsed under those NPAs. So this was the beginning of the NPAs, though. But it was always those public spirited officers who give out these stories. Otherwise, how do we get access to information? So our access entirely rests on public spirited officials and political rivalry, leakages. I normally don't get into that sort of business because that's a different arena altogether.